Hello, fellow anatomists. Today we're going to be focusing on objective 8.1. If you have your skull, take it out. It might be helpful to see these spaces in 3D. To get oriented, we're going to start with the temporal fossa boundaries. It's outlined in the black dotted line. Here you can see the lateral boundary is the zygomatic arch. Anteriorly, you have the zygomatic bones as well as the frontal bone. Inferiorly, you have the greater wing of the sphenoid bone seen here in yellow and the zygomatic arch again. And posteriorly and superiorly, you have the inferior and the superior temporal lines. Now we're moving on to the infratemporal fossa. We're going to look at the picture to the right to see it with the mandible and the lateral boundary here for the ramus of the mandible. Anteriorly in the picture on the left, the mandible has been removed, and anteriorly you can see the maxilla is the boundary. Medially, you have the lateral pterygoid plate in yellow of the sphenoid bone. Posteriorly in pink, you have the styloid process. Superiorly, you have the greater wing here of the sphenoid bone, and inferiorly, you have the medial pterygoid muscle, which runs this way and will be seen in a few pictures. Many structures pass through the infratemporal fossa, but we're going to focus on the muscles of mastication that reside here, starting with temporalis. Its attachments are the temporal fossa here and the condyle of the mandible. Its innervation is the mandibular branch of the trigeminal nerve, or V3, and more specifically the deep temporal. Its actions on the mandible are to elevate and retract it. Moving on to the masseter muscle, its attachments are the zygomatic arch here and the ramus of the mandible down here. Its innervation is also the mandibular branch of trigeminal nerve, or the masseteric, and it elevates and protracts the mandible. Lastly, we have the medial and lateral pterygoid. Both are innervated by, again, the mandibular branch of the trigeminal. Medial is the nerve to the medial pterygoid, and lateral is the nerve to the lateral pterygoid. Medial, the superficial attachment is the maxillary tuberosity, and deep, we have the medial surface of the lateral pterygoid plate here, and they both attach down here to the ramus of the mandible. Its action is to elevate and protract the mandible. And lastly, we have the lateral pterygoid. The superior attachment is the greater wing of the sphenoid, and the inferior is the lateral pterygoid plate. They connect to the temporal mandibular joint, articular disc, and the neck of the mandible. Bilaterally, contraction, it protracts and depresses the mandible, and unilateral contraction is side to side or contralateral swing. That's all for now.